is called to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Acom? Here. Mrs. Schneider?
Here.
Mrs. Klick?
Here.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Here.
Mr. Cebulski? Here.
All right, we begin tonight's meeting with special recognition from Mr. Tom Marshall from the American Legion. I invite him to the podium to tell us about the contest.
Thank you. As she said, I'm Tom Marshall. I'm the commander of the American Legion post in town, and I'm here to present awards to this year's A&G test winners. Can everybody hear me? Okay. But before we announce the winners, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the test and why we give the test. When the American Legion was formed, they wanted to promote Americanism in this country, and one of the ways they wanted to do it, they wanted America to be a nation that operates built on citizenship, and they wanted everyone to value citizenship and teach citizenship, which is one of the ways we try to do it with this test. They thought that America would only be a mighty nation if it was built on citizenship. The founders of the American Legion placed good participatory citizenship as one of the highest priorities, where the American Legion prepares youth for lives of civic responsibility, with the Legion playing a leading role in flag education and etiquette, and the American Legion posts working with communities to make them a better place to live. Now, the Americanism and Government test has been given for 20 years, and it tests knowledge of U.S. citizenship, U.S. Constitution, flag etiquette, and government at the federal, state, county, and city level. So it's a tough test. And the test consists of 50 questions, some true and false, the rest multiple choice, and there's an essay question at the back that breaks tiebreakers. And we had one tiebreaker break this time. It's given, offered for students grades 10 through 12. Principal Mike Hayes and social study teachers Chris Radke helped us generate interest in the test and organizing the students. 60 students took the test. Tests were sorted by grade and then sorted by sex to determine a winning boy and girl for each class. As this is a difficult test, the winning scores generally range from the high 20s to the mid 30s. 5 of the 6 winners had scores within that range. Aiden Kondick, I think I have his name right, the senior scored a 46, which is a great score. Each winner is going to receive a certificate tonight, noting their achievement, and a check for $50 from the American Legion. The winner's information have been forwarded to the district, which represents all 19 Legion posts in Portage County, and the district will evaluate our winners against other winners in the county, and a county winner will be declared for each class. And those winners will receive some recognition from the county. If you make it by the county, you go to state. If you make it by state, you go to national. So, it's a pretty tough standard to get to the top, but I think Aiden certainly got a shot at getting partway there. The rest of the students, it was a good score. It's the score that the winners most of the time have. And so nothing wrong with getting in the 20s or the 30s. I gave a copy of the test to the school board and let them look at it. I took it. I don't think I got a 40 on it, but a lot of you had to be alive. Over time you gain knowledge of things, and if you're in high school, you just don't have the time to accumulate that extra knowledge. But anyway, we gave this test to the district. So we'll see if Aiden does well. I assume they'll report it back to us. Okay, so with that, I'd like to present the awards to the winners. When I announce your name, please come forward to receive your awards. And we're going from sophomores to seniors. So Benjamin Atkins is the first one. The next sophomore is Maya Wolf. We got the vote. Thank you. First junior is Santosh Kumar. Thank you so much. We're meeting the kids. Some of them took the full hour. I think these guys, I remember seeing them were there. The next one is Amelia Kilway. Congratulations, Amelia. Then on to seniors, Gracian Vidovic. Congratulations. And lastly, Aiden. Congratulations and good luck further on down the road. And we also have a certification or a certificate for the high school. So, Mike.
That was Mike's.
Let's go to the minutes. Oh, that one. Kim and Maria, after your True.
All right, thank you, students, for coming tonight. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Congratulate the students on your great scores and for taking the initiative to get involved with the test. You're free to leave if you'd like. All right, next we will move on to the approval of minutes. We had no speakers.
No public comment.
Okay.
Correct. Let's give him a second.
We had two meetings last month, a special meeting on November 19th and a regular meeting on the 25th. We all attended both, so we'll take them together. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second?
Are there any comments, additions, edits to the minutes? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Aiken?
Yes.
All right, minutes are approved as written. And now we will move on to the list.
Yes, I have the first report this evening, and when I get done, we will set up our elementary principals, and we'll go over the credit goals and Miller goals. So the topic that I wanted to talk to the board about this evening is actually value added. It's something that we have brought to the board's attention a few times in the past. I think actually Mike Roberto has done that presentation before, and maybe even discussed it to a certain extent when we talked about the report card, but wanted to go in more in depth. So one of the things I want to talk about with value added, it's a different kind of achievement data than we typically share. You have seen, when we look at the OSTs and the different achievement levels, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, whether they're proficient or accelerated advanced. This is a little different. So the value added data is all about growth. So how much a student grew from one year to the next on the OSTs, or potentially a cohort of students. So a little bit a different measure. It's also a really abstract measure in a sense that the formula they use to derive value-added data is a mystery. It's not something that they share, so it's not something that we can really explain. We can just sort of explain how it works. It has been around for a while to measure growth starting after third grade. So in third grade, when they take the math and ELA tests, the OSTs, that sort of establishes the baseline, and then from that year forward, going into their junior year with some of the tests, like the U.S. government test, there is growth data or value-added data. It is not always direct year-to-year data. So, for example, tests like science and social studies, they don't even necessarily have a test the year before, but it's derived based upon a student's testing history, starting with that baseline data in third grade. So it's pretty abstract, it's pretty contrived, but the bottom line is we want to see our students growing, right? Either at the expected level or more than expected level. So one of the things, just really briefly before we get into the actual charts, and I do have a number of charts to show you all the different the growth data. It is calculated with these things called NCEs, as you can see up there, normal curve equivalents. So think of like all the test scores on all the, each year on all the different subject areas like a distribution of scores. Essentially what they do is they calculate that, the company does, Value Added does, and it marks the individual student and cohorts of students, their placement along that curve of their distribution. So like if my hand's the distribution and the student or the cohorts of students is like right there in that distribution, and they maintain that place in the distribution, that's basically expected growth. That's like the simplest way they can put it. So that's what we're measuring. So if they move up along that distribution, then that would be more than expected growth. And it actually, it doesn't matter, let's say if they passed the test or if they scored if they were not proficient, it's all about growth, which is interesting because, you might see a student score a 4 both years, but they may not have growth between those 2 different years, depending on what their raw score is. So it's a little bit abstract, it's a little bit complicated, but just want to give a little bit background. What I'm going to show on these different charts here of all the different OST data, we have 2 different years. And this was, I didn't put this in the report, but I did sort of summarize it. We have 2 different years, 23 and 24. Obviously, you can see from up there that the lowest area, that little orange area that's -2 and below, our goal is not to have any growth areas for our tested subjects there. We want to be in the green area, and if you can see that little line in the middle, that's sort of the 0 line. So anything slightly below that and slightly above that, that's actually -2 to 2. That's sort of the expected, there's evidence of expected growth. So anywhere in the green is sort of like that's the good area. Obviously, we would like to see it more on the right side of that, the higher side of that, trending towards the blue. And then anything in the blue area is +2 and above. And what that essentially means is that is significant evidence of more than expected growth. That doesn't mean, like there's actually numbers associated with that. That doesn't mean they're getting like 2 years of growth or 3 years of growth. It means significant evidence of more than expected growth. So I'll kind of go through these and, feel free to stop me if you have questions. But you can see in 23 and 24, give you a little bit of longitudinal data there. In ELA 4 through 8, all of these areas are in the green or blue. You can see this past year, we did have 6th and 7th grade, which were all basically, pedal to the metal, all the way to the right in blue, which was awesome. And then 4th, 5th, and 8th, they're all in that green area. And as I mentioned in the report, every single one of our tested areas was in the green and the blue, which is obviously a goal. So we're excited to see that. And I can tell you it doesn't always look like that in every single school district. There's a little delay here, so make sure it clicks. In math, you can see the 23 is the top and 24 is the bottom. And you can see that 4th, 7th, and 8th, we all those areas were in the blue. And then you can see even in 5th and 6th, we're pretty high in the green area in terms of significant evidence of expected growth. And quite frankly, this was a positive thing. I was also hoping for this. You've heard me talk about achievement data in math is lagging. Locally, we've, since the pandemic, but that's a state trend, that's a national trend. So we're seeing that growth, and quite frankly, we needed a little bit more of that growth in math than we did in ELA. Obviously, we always want to see as much growth as possible, but that was something I was hoping to see. So that's obviously a positive as well. Science, when it clicks up there, it'll take a second. We only have 2 tests, so that's just 5th grade and 8th grade. 5th grade, you can see was above the 0 line in the green, and 8th grade pretty high up in the blue. I don't have the exact numbers on this. I could pull it up, but significant evidence of growth there, so looking very good. And then when we click over to social studies and algebra, those are the next 2 tests. This is really encouraging to see. You can see the algebra, and that's really mostly a 9th grade test, except for some students that are accelerated. But 23, 24, in the blue, both areas, both times. And then government and U.S. history, sort of a flip-flop there. So in 23, that was definitely one of our concerning areas, and there had been a trend there, and we made some significant changes So we went from that orange all the way up into the blue, had huge growth, so very excited about those changes and what we had done. And then in U.S. history in '23, that was something we had hoped to see based upon the previous year. We got huge growth and solid for this past year, but really in a good spot. So I was excited to see that for both those assessments as well. Moving on to some more of the high school tests, you can see biology. We went from a little bit lower in the green to above the zero line in the green in '24. Previous years we have been in the blue, but the last 2 years have been green. But then you can see the ELA 2 and geometry, just really high growth in those assessments as well. So really looking good in the growth data. And this is, in terms of sort of looking at takeaways, this is what we want to see. I mean, we want to see solid growth. We want to see the green and the blue every single year if possible and every single area. And it's also a reason why when we're looking at the assessment data, we kind of have to take a multi-pronged approach. You have to look at your first sort of lens, and I put this in your report, is looking at the achievement data, and then you have to get contextual data, so what's the landscape, how are other schools achieving on these OSTs, and then the final piece is the growth piece, which is obviously looking very good. 9 out of the 16 areas are significant evidence that students made more than expected growth. And I think a lot of this is attributed to the fact that we do have high expectations. I mean, that our classes are not easy. Being at the middle school and high school, it's not easy. There is a certain amount of rigor that is expected. But if we did not have our system of MTSS, so that means obviously the supports, helping students that are struggling, intervention, if we didn't have that layered in, it would not look like this. We would not have that growth with all of our students. And I can even break it down. I didn't put it in here, but we can see growth with special education students. We can see growth with certain demographics, students on free and reduced lunch, things like that. So those are things that we look at a sort of a micro level, but the bottom line is with all of our students, we're getting excellent growth. And this is part of the process that the principals undergo each year is we will take a look at it. Well, I'll look at value-added data, and then I'll meet with Mike Hayes and his administrators and Mark and Ryan Beaumont and then Michelle and Jeff Morris just to look at that, talk about this, and then we have our individual teacher reports too, so that becomes a reflection. And it's also part of the teacher evaluation process. It's HQSD, that means high quality student data. So it's a required piece of student data for teachers to use in the evaluation process. So there's that reflection of how did it go last year, what strategies do you think were working or not working, and there's more granular reports that we can look at to see how students grew in different subpopulations too, so we can use that as part of the reflection process. So it's definitely a part of our continuous improvement each year, and looking really good, really healthy right now. So I wanted to share that with the board. So I thought it was good news and what we want to see each year. So I will take questions now. If you have questions about value added or anything specific, and then I'll get it set up for Craddock and Miller and for Maria and Kim.
Do you find that the value-added scores are consistent for any given teacher from year to year, or do we find that things like class size and other variables could impact that?
I love that question. That's a really good question. So for the most part, I would say it is consistent with what we expect for our teachers. And, when we think about, when we look at it and then we think about the year before and think about what we observed and what we saw, usually it is, I would say, for the most part, pretty accurate or what we would expect. Sometimes there can be some surprises, but there's a certain amount of conjecture too, because it doesn't tell you exactly, why that happened. So there is some interpretation. So I don't know that class size is something that I would say is a huge part of it, but the teachers, I think, who we observe them having really strong connections with kids, being diagnostic, using good, strong teaching practices, it usually shows in the value-added data. But that's a great question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right.
Who's next?
Yes, let me get them set up. Ms. Stewart, you're first.
right. Good evening. I want to begin tonight by just sharing some gratitude to the board. Thank you very much for allowing some time. I know, brief amount of time, to share some of the exciting things happening at Craddock. The district is large and there's a lot going on, so it's really cool to have a little piece of the meeting tonight, an important meeting to share a little bit about what's happening at our school. I'm also continually grateful to continue to be part of the Aurora City School District. This is a wonderful place, as you well know, for kids to learn and grow, but equally a great place for adults to learn and grow too, and I've really enjoyed that in my time here so far. So on to our building goals. So I think it's really important just to build a little bit of background as to how the building goals come to be. In any given year, there are so many things that we're working on. And how do we choose the things that are most important to sort of highlight and really, really, really hone in on? And obviously that comes down to all sorts of different type of data, qualitative and quantitative data. So we really reflect and look at all those different pieces of data, all those different types of data. We really involve our instructional leaders highly in the process of building goal formulation. They are in the trenches every day and know specifically what's happening, so their input and feedback is really critical. We do a lot of that over the summer and then into the beginning of the school year, and then I do some final reflecting on all of that feedback, make little adjustments and tweaks, and then communicate all of the different shared visions that we have with all the different dispositional leaders in the building. Our instructional leaders, because we're only first and second grade, there's 4 total, 2 share first and 2 share second. But out of a staff of close to 55, 60 people, it's critical that we have more people involved as well from that dispositional leadership standpoint. So we really do as much as we can to get them involved as well, helping to share that vision out to our staff. So then we have 3 major areas that we decided to hone in on this year. Our first one has to do with the vein of PBIS, which I know you've heard a lot about. We are really trying to continue to make strides with our PBIS work. And one of the major pieces of that as we're stepping into the Tier 2 realm of PBIS is to hone in on and clean up and continue to refine the work with our behavior incident report, which is a great source of data for us on how kids are responding to the behavioral supports that are in place in the building. Are they enough? Are they too much? Are they not enough? That helps us decide at a Tier 1 level and a Tier 2 level what we need to do to make sure we're connecting with our kids. So we decided to really make that a focus this year for us. We piloted what we call the BIR, the Behavior Incident Report, last year. We asked everyone to kind of pilot, but we only had about 1/4 of our staff actually utilizing the tool, which again, it's fine, it was a pilot. But this year we've moved into 3/4 of our staff utilizing that tool. We have the data that we review at each of our PBIS meetings to look at what exactly are the major behaviors happening, what are the minor behaviors that are happening, what areas of the school seem to be difficult, where can we do some cleanup, where can we provide additional support. So that data has been helpful for us as well. I also share all those trends and patterns weekly. Even though we discuss them monthly in our PBIS meetings, we share them weekly with our staff in our weekly communication. They have links often to the actual doc that allows them to dive deep into the data and look through, which has been great. And then we've also, that data has led us to integrate and implement a bunch of supports. Some of the specifics is really refining our teacher language. We're focusing on the book, The Power of Our Words, and thinking a lot about what our interactions with kids look like and sound like. Even though they're 6, 7, and 8, they pick up on things like sarcasm, and that's really important for us to be mindful of across a busy day when we're moving from one thing to the next. We're utilizing logical consequences a lot more this year. That's not a move away from punitive types of approaches, but thinking of linking up those consequences more logically with what they're doing. You color on the rug that you're sitting on with your dry erase marker, it's logical that you would spend some time cleaning that up as opposed to just sitting in for recess and staring at a wall. You know, we really want them to understand the importance of what they did, how it impacted their learning environment, and then how we can help support them through that. And then Calm Down Corner, our fantastic PTO and our Aurora Schools Foundation have supported a grant that our staff wrote to get a Calm Down Corner in every single classroom in our building, which is has been already utilized by quite a few teachers, but the ones that weren't ready to utilize it or didn't know they had funds to utilize that have been now able to access that, and that has been a really great thing that impacts all 436 of our students at Craddock, which is really neat. And then finally, we got some recognition this year from our SST and our ESC for the work that we've done. We're at the bronze level, which is great, and this year we'll be applying for silver. So all of those things indicative of the great work that we're doing and what it continues to do for Craddock, which is great. Our second goal perfect. Oh, there it was. There it went. I'm not clicking, Paul, so let me know if you need me to. Okay, perfect. The next piece is, the next goal has to do with our teams and their collaboration to look at data consistently, to analyze student growth, and to be able to create action steps that are going to impact our growth. And we're really measuring that specifically across our fall, winter, and spring benchmarking. Our teams meet consistently, which is wonderful. They are in great practice with beginning on time, ending on time, having very full agendas. What we really have focused on this year too, and the end of last year, is really having more vertical work going on. So not just having second and first meet in isolation, but although we're only 2 grade levels, we are mighty. There are 10 of each teacher. So bringing all 20 of them together, plus the intervention specialists, is pretty amazing. So we've been utilizing that a lot this year. We've got, again, great meetings happening, but we go to the meetings, we look at data, we talk about strategies, resources, instructional practices we're going to put in place, and sometimes we found that we didn't have the follow through. There was never a time to come back and talk about, how did that go? Did anybody try it? Did it work well? How did it impact your learners? So we're really trying to be a little bit more mindful this year on following through and making sure we circle back to those action steps that we set. We're working really closely with our ELA and math coaches to continue to formulate our scope of the work that we're doing across our PLCs all year long. And the next big piece, I'd say this is probably one of the most impactful pieces that we have happening. Not only are we looking at the data and the growth at PLCs, but we really feel like our MTSS team in the building is a safety net, not only to make sure none of our students fall through the cracks, but to make sure that none of our staff fall through the cracks. We don't ever want a staff member to be hanging out there, not sure what to do, not sure how to change an intervention, not sure what the best next steps may be with a child instructionally, so they just stay where they're at. And then we've lost some precious weeks and time to move kids. So we have really, really, really refined our MTSS check-in process, which comes between our MTSS meetings all throughout the year. And we are doing everything in our power to provide any and all support that teachers need in addition to what our students need. And an example of how we're looking at that is just the exponential growth that's happening through our phonics and phonemic awareness data right now. And that's all really because we've honed in so much on those conversations in PLCs and MTSS check-ins. Our final goal, and like I said, so many to pick from, has to do with our culture committee. Our building is incredibly diverse, and while you might hold us up to another district like Cleveland Public or Painesville City and say, there's not a lot of diversity in your building, there really is when you look at all the different ways that diversity can show itself. So we had a group of very passionate people come together a couple years ago, and they want to work hard together to make sure that we eliminate all barriers to learning and growing for all of our students, and make sure that we're celebrating diversity consistently, and that we create learning environments that are positive, supportive, and incredibly inclusive of all of our students. There's a lot going on, and if you just walked in and looked at a classroom, you might not think that just by first glance, but when you dive deep and really look at our students and their families, there's a lot of diversity to make sure that we are addressing to eliminate any potential barriers to them accessing all the different instruction and learning that's happening. So this culture committee's been in place for a couple years. We had a survey sent out last year. We had 4 wonderful parents fill it out of all of our parents, and we thought, ooh, this didn't work well. It was electronic, maybe people were busy, there's a lot to see in the newsletter. Let's try good old paper and pencil. We sent it out paper and pencil this year, and we had over 3/4 of our parents send it back, which was wonderful. That data allowed us to know, what type of cultures are represented on our building? What kind of religions do we have? What holidays are special to you? What celebrations do you have? Would you be willing to come in and talk to our school about those celebrations? So that was really neat. That also allows us to partner with, we are currently partnering with, and I have to give her a shout out, Cameron Taylor from Aurora High School reached out to us and said she is quite the vivacious and gregarious go-getter. Hey, we want to come to Craddock and work with your kids. What can we do to try to bring culture to your school? So we have taken the data from our survey and we have sent her our top cultures that are really highly represented to start with. And she and her comrades at Aurora High School, I think she said she has over 40 kiddos that are going to be coming to us. And they are going to be helping our kids learn more about the different cultures that are highly represented in our building. We'll continue to celebrate them on announcements in the morning. And then we have some different activities, from the kids creating a self-portrait and representing who they are to whole school activities that are happening as the year gets going. So really exciting, more I'd say qualitatively measured for sure than quantitatively, but nonetheless probably one of the most critical parts for the growth in our building, just because we are in the business of people and we truly believe in the greenhouse and growing our roots and nurturing the 6, 7, and 8-year-olds that step through our doors. So finally, wrapping up tonight, slowly but surely, I think the most important thing to point out that if we can always keep this in mind, we know we're doing the right things, is that the most important thing to keep in mind in any decision that we make, in any goals that we set, in any work that we do, is that the kids are always at the forefront of it. And that is really the heart of everything that's happening at Craddock. We always have our North Star with the strategic vision to guide us, which is wonderful. But if we can keep those things in mind, we have been led in the right direction so far and we'll continue doing the great work that's been happening at Craddock. I did put just a little heart up there by collaborate, one of our competencies, because while I am incredibly grateful for the wonderful admin team that I get to be a part of every single day, Maria and I get to share in all of the wonderful things that happen with the young early learners in the district, with the pre-K2 kids. So I do want to end tonight by extending my gratitude to her and all the work that she does, sending wonderful kids up to Craddock for 1st and 2nd grade. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maria.
Okay, so I'm going to round things out after you've heard from all the principals over the past few months with the littlest learners that we have here in our district. So, of course, I have all the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in my building, and I couldn't enjoy it anymore. So I have an amazing team who we collaborate with our special services department, as well with our curriculum office, as well as our instructional leaders, to make sure that we're setting forth goals that are reflective of what our students need, what our staff needs, and ultimately what our families need. So same process that Kim follows at setting goals for her building, I do the same thing to make sure that I'm sending out a shared message that we all have had a chance to collaborate on and agree upon, and make sure that we are moving things forward in the right direction. The first goal that I want to review for Miller that we have this year is that we want to continue to enhance our focus on the whole child to support their social, emotional, and academic success. That is the most important thing in our building, because without their social emotional development, the academics aren't going to be available for them to access if they're not emotionally regulated. And 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds have a lot of big feelings, and that is something that we are really used to in our building. So one of the things that we made sure that we focused is expanding our MTSS opportunities for all children. And what that means is our systems of support that we have in our building. The first area of systems of support is PBIS. That is their social and emotional interventions that we have in place. And then the other side of it is RTI, which is more of our academic support and intervention. Miller has been a gold level school for the past 3 years for PBIS, which tells us through outside audits that our Tier 1 services that we're providing to kids for their social emotional development is up and running really successfully. We have interventions in place if they need a little bit of something or a little bit of support. And then our Tier 3 supports show that if we have a big skill gap or deficit in social emotional development, that our team is there to make sure that kids succeed. So we have been in the process of PBIS for 6 to 10 years at Miller, and we are now at the point that our society has changed, so the children coming into our building have changed. The expectations that we created to teach at the beginning of each school year needed to shift as well. So we took some time to refine our Tier 1 teaching expectations and actually revamped all of them. which required us to also make all new posters and visuals, because for our kids, if they can see it, they know what the model should look like, and you will see that all over our building, my newsletters, and that is something that we accomplished this school year. The second part of this whole expanded MTSS system is that the Division of Early Childhood position statement is that preschool programs should be participating in MTSS, which means they should be afforded opportunities for tiered systems of support. So we make ourselves available as an MTSS team to not only support the preschoolers in our building, but throughout our community. So we partner with all the local community preschools to make sure that we are providing supports to them if they have students who eventually will be in the Aurora City schools who might need some supports. Often right now we're finding that looks like supporting them with fine motor skills, behavior regulation, or maybe it's even some speech recommendations. So we work with community preschool programs, we go out there, we provide systems of support, which could look like providing visuals, or maybe a small intervention, or maybe just some observations and recommendations. Not only do we do that in our outside community, but we do that within our building. So if we have a teacher who needs support with a child who has come to school who needs a little bit of help using a pencil, using scissors, it might not necessarily mean they have a disability in fine motor skills, but they haven't had the opportunity to use a pencil or use scissors yet. So MTSS is our systems of support that we provide to all children within the Aurora community, and that involves a lot of collaboration with our team and our local community. Our second goal, oftentimes preschool and kindergarten operate in separate worlds, but now we are finding that we want to make sure that the things that are working in our K-5 system is also being brought down into preschool as well. This goal is actually aligned to kindergarten. So our kindergarten team has revamped our mathematics course of study over the past few years, and we've rolled that out with a lot of success. And we're continuing to enhance what our course of study looks like by looking at our assessments, creating a timeline for our assessments, bringing our data to our PLC team to make sure that we're looking at what it's telling us so that we can create some criteria for intervention. And through supports that we have in our building this year, we are providing kids with math intervention time, making sure that we have gap closing, and making sure that they are becoming strong mathematicians. We're working really closely with our math coach, and our team meets regularly using our MTSS coordinator to make sure that we are all aligned using the same assessments, monitoring our data, and helping kids succeed as mathematicians. So this goal has been ongoing in our building for the past few years for kindergarten, and we're making great strides, and this year has just kind of helped us continue to go to the right. That last goal that I'm going to talk about is goal 3, and this is all about our preschool. And the Division of Early Childhood has required all early childhood programs to adopt high-quality instructional materials. So this is requiring our preschool to audit our current instruction, our assessments, and our programs that we are providing to the students within our building. So our preschool team took on the task to review all of the high-quality instructional materials that were on the list, make selections, order them, pilot them, and make sure that we are selecting something that is a right fit for the students and children in the Aurora schools. We also want to make sure that we maintain some of our must-haves in our current curriculum with what we're going to select moving forward, so that we can have a pre-K-5 scope and sequence that is matched to the goals that we have as a district. So they have been really busy taking the coursework in the science of reading, making sure that there's alignment in the content in these programs with the theory that we're learning in the science of reading, so that our program in preschool is meeting the needs of a variety of learners. Overall, our team has been really busy. They've been learning, they've been growing, they've been selecting materials. So I would say for the most part in preschool, it just feels like a lot of new work, and we have done it by really taking little steps towards the end goal. And so far, it's been a really successful implementation and preview of a variety of programs that we have. So overall, we just want to say thank you for the support that you provide to us. Our elementaries are some really special places for kids to grow and thrive and learn. Our doors are always open, so please feel free to stop by whenever you are available, and we would love to host you. So thank you so much.
Thank you both. Good reports.
Do you have any questions for the two of us?
What does a calm down corner look like? I think I need one.
I think we all need to calm down corner attack.
Pam's gonna come try them all out.
They can look very different, really. I mean, the individual that's creating a calm down corner can shape what's in there, but it's materials that sort of hit at all five senses. So you want things that kids can touch, feel, smell, hear. We see the materials that were just ordered were some really cool, neat, different coloring books that have texture to them. Some fidgets, hands kinds of things, a really neat chair that the kids can sit in, so there's a special place. It's not sort of a place that, is low regard to go to, but an exciting place that you want to go to, not necessarily go to when you're, at a level 10 either. Maybe you're starting to climb that ladder of emotion and feeling like you're getting into the red zone a little bit. You can start to head over that way and find some calmness. So I've even seen some teachers sitting in the calm down corner. So it works for all of us. Good question.
I just hope children don't like it so much that they learn the behavior that will get them there. Do you know
Sure.
what I'm saying?
Understood.
I'm
There's
sure
a fine
some
balance for
balance,
sure.
yeah. But thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Okay, Mr. Volleson, we'll move on to Treasurer's Report.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Mahalis. I have 4 resolutions for your consideration this evening, and I'll start with the financial report, that being for the month of November. And for the month of November, our expenditures exceeded revenues by over $4.7 million, decreasing our general fund cash balance to a little over $16 million 5 months into the fiscal year. Revenues were about 1% greater than projected, and expenditures about 0.3% greater. Nothing really to speak of on the revenue side. Typically, November, December, and even into January are quiet months revenue. We get our state foundation and some other revenue dollars, investment dollars, those types of things coming in. On the expenditure side, our annual principal payment at $419,000 was paid on the Layton certificates of participation, and this was the final payment. So Layton is paid off. We own the building, and now the PI will have full use of the funds that do come into it. Also, November was a 3 payroll month, so you'll see that obviously our payroll and our benefits are higher than what you typically see on a month-by-month basis. So we have 2 of those every year, as we're a 26-pay district. So thus far for the fiscal year, revenues about $5,000 greater than projected, expenditures about 15, almost 16 greater. So we have an unfavorable variance of a little over $10,000 5 months into the fiscal year. So we're running pretty much according to plan. And that is Exhibit D1.
All right. Exhibit D1, a resolution to approve financial statements and reports. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Volleson? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Exhibit D2 is the then and now statement, and this is for Fire Protection Inc. for $4,400. And this was, we had a water break by the high school on a Saturday, so these folks had to be called out to come out on Sunday and fix it. So obviously there was not a purchase order in place ahead of time, so that is to cover that particular repair cost that we had.
Okay, Exhibit D2, a resolution to approve then and now statements. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Any questions for Mr. Volleson? Yes, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Okay, Exhibit D3, these are advances and transfers. And we have a couple of transfers, and basically we have $10 coming from the IDEA B fund from last year to this year, and the same with the 587, which is the preschool IDEA fund of $1,552.53. So these are just carryover dollars moving from one project year to the next project year, so we could expend them. The advance is $75,000 from the general fund to the bond retirement fund. We typically do this every year. Our bond payments are a lot higher in December, as that's where all the principal is paid plus interest, where June is just interest. And obviously, our taxes come in about 50/50, or 51/49. So you're always short in this time of the year, and then we'll receive the other half of the tax dollars come February, March, and then we'll return these dollars to the general fund.
Okay, Exhibit D3, a resolution to approve transfers and advances. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Any questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
And finally, the last resolution is the first of two resolutions, and this is declaring a necessity to renew our existing 5.61 mil tax levy. Again, this is a 5-year levy, and this brings in approximately $3.8 million per year into the district. So this would be a renewal levy, obviously, no new taxes. There'll be a second resolution. After we pass this, I'll send this to the county auditor. They'll give the exact amount of dollars, and then there'll be a second resolution, which we'll do at the January, most likely at the January regular board meeting, to put it on the levy for renewal in May.
Okay, so Exhibit D4 is a resolution declaring the necessity of renewing a tax levy. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Chair seconds. Any questions for Mr. Volleson?
Mr. Volleson, when was this originally passed?
This was in the 80s, I'd have to look back. I forget exactly which year in the 80s, but it was in the mid-1980s. So it's been on the books over 30 years or so. So this would be the 6th or 7th time that we've been renewing it over the course of time.
It's got a strong renewal history.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
All right, resolutions are approved. That concludes your report?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to new business, we have Exhibit E1A, which is a resolution to accept gifts and contributions. The elementary PTO donated $3,000 for PBIS, and the Aurora VFW gave checks worth $635 for middle school students who wrote essays for the Patriots Pen. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
And we thank both of these donors. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
All right, Exhibit E1B1 is a resolution to employ support staff substitutes for this current school year. May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Exhibit E1B2 is a resolution to approve the introductory appointment of support staff. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. Exhibit E1B3 is a resolution to approve the job description and pay scale for insurance/intake and business secretary position. May I have a motion? We'll start with that.
Moved.
Second.
All right, and then I've asked Mr. Roberto to just tell us a little bit about it. I know you gave us the paper, but.
Sure, it's quite a title because it's doing a lot of different things. In particular, this started when we spoke with our EMIS coordinator, Mary Jane Check, as we're working. Typically, a district has a person who all they do is EMIS. But Mary Jane, over the last number of years, she has been doing EMIS and I should explain, EMIS is an Education Management Information System. It's all of our data that goes to the states, and it's a very important position because it not only helps in relation to the testing and things like that, it's school funding. Our funding is connected to it. So it's very important that it's accurate. Again, typically a district will have someone committed to working on that only. Over the years, we've had Mary Jane working on EMIS and insurance, kind of two big jobs. And each of those are growing more, so EMIS has really turned into a monster, to be honest, in terms of some of the things the state has expected. So we were looking to provide a little relief for her. Also, many districts have a human resource director. We do not. We have a personnel secretary. Amy Groth does a wonderful job, and prior to her, Linda Arnold did the same. But as our district continues to grow and we have more and more staff and things are going on, that's become more of a challenge. So this position would also not only pull insurance off of Mary Jane's plate, it would help with the intake process. Amy would still be doing the majority of personnel, but the intake piece, which is also kind of tied into the insurance, this individual would be working with that. And then the last part of this is Sal was in charge of 5 different areas, from transportation, nutrition, custodial, maintenance, and then grounds. And he doesn't have a secretary. Usually that could be 5 different directors in each, all with the secretary. And so what we felt is that this person would be able to help in that position a little bit, and things like with POs, purchase orders, and things like filing, as well as phones and helping with invoices and things like that. So this is a little bit of an eclectic position, which is why the title is set up, but this would align to our building secretary pay scale, which I gave to you there, so you could get an idea of Bill put together the sort of the baseline, starting position a little under $40,000 up to the middle and then the top, and that also shows the insurance as well as family insurance, I should say, as well as retirement and Medicare. So you can kind of see at the bottom of each of those the potential total cost. We don't know where that person will fall. Typically, we don't get someone coming in with 0 experience, so the baseline's probably a little low, but it gives you an idea of the cost of this position.
Okay, and you're going to post this after we approve it?
Yes.
All right, are there any questions, comments? All right, then Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, so all the personnel resolutions have been approved, and then we have Exhibit E1C, which is a resolution to approve the high school program of studies as presented to us last month. May I have a motion, please?
Moved. Second.
Are there any comments or questions about it? Again, Paul, I would just like to thank you for the very clear way you delineated what was new and different, and it made it easy to look at.
Our pleasure.
All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
All right, program of studies is approved. Under board items, we have Exhibit F1, which is a resolution to rename the conference center. And I would like to read through this before I get a motion and a second, and then we'll vote on it. It's titled Recognition of Former Board of Education President Jerry Kohansky. Whereas the Aurora Board of Education would like to honor and recognize Jerry's dedication, accomplishments, and many years of service to the Aurora City Schools and community. Whereas Jerry was a resident of Aurora for over 36 years and served on the Aurora School Board for 24 years, with 22 of those years as board president, and prior to that serving as board vice president. Whereas during Jerry's tenure, Aurora built Layton Intermediate School, expanded Miller Elementary School and Harmon Middle School, and added additions to Aurora High School in 2002 and 2010. The Aurora City School District also renovated the stadium, replaced the track, and added turf to the field 2 times when Jerry was board president. Lastly, the purchase of the Aurora City School District Conference Center and its subsequent renovation was driven by Jerry's vision for the building. Now, therefore, we, the Aurora City Schools Board of Education, with authority vested in our elected positions, do hereby declare that from this date forward, the Aurora City Schools Conference Center shall officially be recognized as the Jerry Kohansky Conference Center. May I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
I would like to say that in addition to all of this, one of the most important things that Jerry did early in his tenure was to take this district from a financially struggling district to one that was financially stable. And that was due in large part to his business acumen and his life experience in the business world. And he did it remarkably well and in a relatively short period of time. So although it's sad that Jerry was never able to be in this building for a meeting, we are glad now to be able to recognize him officially through the renaming of the conference center. Anything else?
If I could add, if you don't mind, that I wanted just to share that I believe that Jerry's service, his leadership, his vision for the district, from establishing a succession plan for the superintendents, the last 3 of us anyway, to his vision for this building, I believe will have a lasting impact on the Aurora City School District. And I personally couldn't think of a more worthy way for the district to honor Jerry's contribution. So I appreciate your consideration for this renaming.
I don't think Ann Morrison would mind if I say this publicly. Ann and I served on the board for a lot of years with Jerry as president, and we say it was at the Veterans Dinner that we were talking to her son Joe, and Ann said, you know, Jerry just bossed us around for a lot of years. She said, but he was very lovable. I said, yeah, he was. So, all right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
All right, resolution is approved. Exhibit F2 is a resolution to set the date for our organizational meeting, and that will be held January 7th at 6 o'clock. I believe in this room, correct? May I have a motion, please?
Moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. And then Exhibit F3, we need to vote for a president pro tem to serve as president from January 1st until January 7th at 6 o'clock. And I would like to nominate Steve Cebulski for that. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? There being none, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Cebulski?
Abstain.
You could vote for yourself.
Yeah,
Just don't vote no.
just vote for-
Mr. Acom?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. All right, Steve, you're it. Starting January 1st. All right, are there any other board items?
I wanted to take a moment, since we'll be setting the schedule for the regular meetings at the organizational meeting, to discuss possibly changing the day that we meet or the week that we meet, so that our meetings don't conflict with the city council meetings. So we would discuss that so that residents would be able to attend both meetings if they'd like.
I did talk to Mr. Volleson about this today. So I'm sure you know, council meets twice a month. I think they meet the 2nd and the 4th
Correct.
Monday of the
Mhm.
month. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes.
So everyone in town, all the community members would have the opportunity to attend both meetings. I mean, to attend one council meeting and one school board meeting. The only people who would not be able to do that would be council members. And I don't know if this stemmed from that, from a council person making that request or not, but if so, I would suggest that the council go to the mayor and city council and see if their meetings could be changed, if that's important to the council people. I asked Mr. Volleson to check, and we've been meeting the 4th Monday of the month for, I think he said nearly 50 years. I mean, the mid-'70s was as far back as
Yes,
you looked.
yes, I looked back, it was 1978, I found.
Is not to say that we couldn't change it, but I know for myself, I sort of have scheduled my entire life around this commitment, the fourth Monday of the month, and I suspect that a lot of people in this room have done the same. So I think it would be a lot to change it. I personally have a standing commitment every third Monday of the month that I'm not willing to change. And I talked to Mr. Vollison today about could we meet on the first or second Monday? Well, the second wouldn't solve the problem, so that would mean just the first, if council is the problem or the issue. And you want to just tell the board what you told me
Oh,
about
yeah, I mean,
meeting
yeah,
the first week?
if it would be the first Monday, the one thing you'd have to keep in mind, like this month, the first Monday was December 2nd. So I presented the November financial report. So you couldn't present the November financial report on December 2nd because Friday was November 29th. The month wasn't even closed out yet. So basically, you'd be looking at the financial report like 1 month, I guess, in arrears. So in December, you'd be approving October, January, November, so on and so forth. Now, that's, you know, obviously up to the board. Is if that's something that they would want to do, but you'd be looking at your financial reports would be a little later that you'd be approving than, you know, what you normally have been doing.
The other thing I thought about, and then I'll stop talking and you all can join in, but it seems that the school events like concerts and other things that we do in the evenings, and I didn't do an investigation on this, but it seems like those are scheduled Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It just seems like not many of those things happen on Mondays, and I don't know if that's because the board meetings are on the fourth Monday. I don't know, and I don't know if these things are scheduled for next year. Are they already on the calendars? Like
Several of the games and things like that are, and you're right, we typically try to avoid Mondays, although there are occasions when a Monday comes, especially say holiday concert time or something where
Right.
we're trying to squeeze it in. But in general, we do
So
try
I
to
guess
avoid
what I'm saying in light of that is that it might be, it's just, I feel like it's too soon to do this for 2025, which is in 2 weeks. Maybe it's something to look at for 2026, to prepare everyone, so. Any other thoughts?
I think Bill answered one of my questions, which was, how long has that been a longstanding practice? But how might changing the meeting date disrupt or change the rhythm of operations and how the district goes about creating its reports or producing, you know, certain functions? Like, does it have an impact on any of these resolutions that we get? Certainly, you know, you don't want to be approving financial reports too late after they're there, but I've not heard, I don't know, truthfully, the concern about it conflicting with city council meetings coming out of left field a little bit. Like, I've heard people, I haven't heard, I know you've raised it as a concern, but I haven't heard nobody's said anything to me about it in the community. It just doesn't seem like a topic other than maybe a select few who are concerned. At least that's my sense. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. It should be fine. But
I've definitely heard community members talk about it. I just thought it was important to discuss, you know, the feasibility of it and why we meet on the fourth Monday.
can I add a different aside? Mike, when we're scheduling scheduling events, and maybe they're already scheduled for next year, but maybe we could take a closer look at how events for different buildings are scheduled and try to coordinate so that we're not overlapping. Major event at Harmon on the same night as some other events at the high school. Try to be sensitive to those families that have multiple kids in the district who can't be in two places at one time.
Absolutely. We try to do a master schedule and do the calendar accordingly to try to avoid some of those things. Sometimes, especially around the holidays, it is a little bit harder. One of the reasons the Winter Music Festival came to light this past Saturday was to try to, you know, avoid some of the conflicts that happen in the evenings with some of those things. But it's something we can, I'm sure, continue to get better with and try to keep all of those things in mind, because when we went through, I had 4 kids in 4 different buildings, so I understand your pain. Yeah.
Well, not just my pain.
Anyone's,
I want to be
yeah.
careful there. That's not just me. That's just, that's something that is consistently discussed in the community, from my viewpoint and from what I hear a lot about. It's just try not to have so many overlapping events.
Absolutely, yes.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, I too have heard comments about that. I don't know if they've come directly from any councilmen or councilwomen that are there or not, but I think one of the questions was that, like, Mike had mentioned that Bill had clarified of the rationale for the fourth week of the month. But I think that concern is out there, that it does overlap. Mhm. Well, and I think it's not necessarily like that everybody's like consistently going to either meeting, but just that opportunity to be able to go if the need arises.
Well, maybe. I think I'd like to learn a little more about the concern. I mean, from my viewpoint, and I was looking at it, I think it's rare that a person would need to or want to speak at each of those meetings. And the meetings are recorded, and they're all available online. So it's not that you can't get access to the information. It's just that you might be getting it a day later. And so, to me, unless I was a person that had to speak at both, and I couldn't be in two places at one time, that might be a problem, but I don't know if that's an issue or not.
Well, maybe because of the timing of things, we should just stick to the plan we have now, and maybe, mid-year 2025, give us some time to start looking at changing it. I do think it's too soon in 2 weeks. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think changing it now, knowing that the year's upon us, but also the council reports theirs before ours. If they have something to say, they could always go to one and then come to ours the second. Our first meeting of the month will be the council's second meeting, so I think there's opportunity to state opinions, but yeah, it'll be recorded, and made information.
I just wanted to commend, I didn't get the phone is, Jason Burdette, Mrs. Smith, is it? Last one, and Catherine Rialto. For the spectacular music concerts that have happened in the last 6 days, from last Tuesday night until the weekend. They did a wonderful job of bringing out students' talents, and it was just really fun. And the sight of you, it just was great. So I was introducing of Catherine as well as that was Saturday, so we all were working hard.
I would agree. I enjoy listening to them play their instruments and all of that, but I think this time of year especially, there's really nothing better than listening to children sing. So moved?
Second.
Mrs. Cluck,
Yes.
Mr. Acom,
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider,
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis.